as long as it saves time and gives some 50% safety while climbing.
Saves time. Okay. So we focused on, there are different acronyms that help with remembering the principles behind good anchors. Um, so what we have focused on is SERENE. So it stands for strong, redundant, equalized, and no extension. Now there's another very often used acronym which includes time as well. So SERENE plus T, they turn it around and call it earnest. The reason why we deliberately left the T out at this point in time is so that you think about the SERENE part, the four core principles, for them to be strong, redundant, equalized, and no extension. The timeliness, the efficiency comes in automatically when you get good at these four. But the timeliness is important too, we'll discuss about that later. But again, what makes for good anchors needs to be super strong. So anytime you get on a rope climb, for instance, most of you are getting on the top ropes. At this point in time, you're trusting that somebody has created strong anchors, right? But you need to think about it yourself. So that is where this workshop comes into picture. So strong. Most of our anchors, we don't set up the top rope anchors, the trad anchors, but it's largely sport-based anchors. That's 2 hangers on 2 bolts. Largely, you assume it's strong, but we've come across older anchors, older bolts, which are, we can actually take them off with one strike of a hand. That means that if you take one fall, they're gone, right? So you have to think about that. So at this point in time, you are hanging out with people with a little more experience who think about these things. But at some point, if you hang out on your own or with someone you are not so sure about it, make sure you trust the anchors. So it needs to be strong, right? Now, when you get on to now, obviously, the focus here is on sport anchors, but from time to time we will talk about other things that you need to think about when you get on a trad climb or a top, if you're setting up a top rope with natural anchors. Natural anchors, trees for instance. Would I trust this completely? In normal situations, this amount of girth for a tree, I probably will not, depending on where I've got it. If this is all I have, and if I'm doing a wrap, probably I'll trust this. This is a mango tree, I'll probably trust this. But if I find something in terms of, you have a lot of cacti around Bangalore, you should not trust even when they are that thick.
They don't have deep roots.
They don't have deep roots, and we have actually taken them down just to figure out, at least one of them we took it down just to figure out how strong they are. And they are. You can totally take them off. And this is not the only one. So just a few months back, we were on top of this place called Sidil Kallu. There's a tree growing out of it, this thick, and it looks like a solid tree, but it's sitting on top of a hill on topsoil.
Oh shit.
And of course, we send Gauri as usual as our probe. Yeah, but that was not our main concern. But the fact is, you need to think about those things. How thick the tree is, the tree trunk is, would you trust it or not? That, at that base, it's totally trustworthy. So you have to make that call, and most of the time don't trust the cacti you'll see on the hillsides. But we have actually... Okay. So anyways,
Also, while we're talking about trees and since we were talking about different points on the trees, we were mentioning the base and over here, whenever you have an opportunity, try and go as close as possible to either a wider spot or to the base of the tree, because otherwise just going out further means you have more torque, right? So you can break this off more easily over here than you can over here.
Session, can you do me a favor?
So whenever possible, go as close as possible.
Do you know where these guys are going? Over here? Oh gosh.
Same like last time, the 2 center lines. We can use the other lines.
Okay. Can we consolidate the gear at least?
Yeah.
Okay, so the rest of you use the base. The reason I set up here is this is a quick and dirty want to just demonstrate things. Now rocks. Let me give this example. Again, Cyril Kalu, we took down this sized rock, about 200 kgs probably, sitting in a crack that seemed solid. But all I had to do was go behind it, lean out, pull it down. It rolled all the way down, probably 200 feet. So just because it's 200 kgs, it looks as big as you are bigger than you, doesn't mean that you can trust it. So it just takes a little bit of lever to lift it up. Probably you can't lift it up on your own, but put in 200 kgs, generate 200 kgs of force, you would be able to lift it up completely. And I'm sure in a fall, you will generate more than that in terms of weight. So watch out for those things. And all of you have been through the workshop, excepting for Deep, right? But you saw the kind of rocks we trussed on top of the first day anchors. Those are huge.
You saw the big rocks at Turuli where we set up the anchors, right?
Those are probably 500,000 kgs each. Yeah. So those I think we'll trust. Again, depending on what you're doing, if you're wrapping off, probably I would say at least 300 kgs minimum. And how do you can't really measure, is it going to be 300 kgs, 400 kgs, right? So if you're uncomfortable, avoid it. It's not worth the rock falling on top of you. And like I said, we actually took down 200 kg rock by just, and it's me, right? You can see my arms. This,
I have a picture.
we have a picture. We could have sent Gauri too, but
I wonder when I will put it in.
no, you would have. That it was that easy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because it just slid through the crack. You just had to. It was waiting to be slid out, even though it looked like it was chopped in. And so that's on the rocks, on the boulders that you would use. So those are natural anchors. The boulders, then you will have sometimes chicken heads and so on. But over here in Bangalore, I don't think we really have much. So strong anchors. Make sure you know what kind of bolts you're getting onto. If you're setting up natural anchors, make sure you trust the kind of trees that you're using. We use trees that are this much girth but have solid roots. Okay. They need to be at least, ideally, I think even the books hesitate in suggesting what, because the tree strengths are different place to place. But I think about 10 inches girth would be what I'll be happy with. And if you're, and again, this is with reference to technical rock climbing and the kind of falls you can generate. In the mountains, Maggie has experience with, as Deep said, you also have to think about time quickly. So you trust sketchy anchors too. Now that's about the strong part of it. Redundant. The reason why we use two bolts is in case one of them fails, the other will be there. That's redundancy. Everything to do with climbing, there's redundancy associated with it. Sometimes you just have a single harness, but the redundancy built into it is the insane strength it has. The ropes, these are the single point failure points, right? But these have insane strength built into it. But everything else, there's a redundancy in terms of the number of units that are used. Anchors, minimum of 2-point anchors, 3-point anchors. Are, we've used, in my beginning of anchor setups, I probably used 7-point anchor too, because it was so sketchy. Trad anchors. We will show you how you can have these really sketchy, thin placements, which, if you have the time, we'll show you. But the point is redundancy. Make sure at least you have 2-point anchor system, or 3-point if it's a trad. But there are exceptions to this rule. One single solid tree, I'll trust it. One single solid boulder where I have got everything around it, I'll trust it. Again, it's a function of what you think is a solid boulder, what you think is a solid tree. That's redundancy. Anything about redundancy before we move on to the other two? Okay, now equalization and no extension. This is where most of the time, most of the discussion gets generated.
Can I make one quick point about redundancy?
Sure, absolutely.
So you mentioned that, I think you mentioned that the reason we have 2 points or more, depending on what your different anchor points look like, the reason for these things is that one of these might fail, right? And so the one thing I wanted to mention is sometimes the most common failure mode, if you have 2 points that are, and this would come down to where exactly you're climbing, what the rock is like, and so on. But sometimes if you're equalizing between 2 points, and you're going over a sharp rock, like a sharp edge or something like that, and someone's climbing this on top rope, and the route is traversing, you have to go left and you have to go right, then your anchor can swing back and forth across this sharp edge, and you can actually saw through an arm of the anchor. I've actually seen someone show me an anchor that one of the arms got sawed off just by abrading back and forth over rock over a matter of less than half an hour.
You're talking about the rope.
So in
So
this
for
case,
instance-
it was sort of the cordelet that was used to build the anchor. It was used to build a trad anchor, and the anchor was going over somewhat of a sharp lip on a granite rock, and there was just enough abrasion there. It may have been old piece of cordelet, that's possible. I don't remember that, but. But imagine there's like a don't worry about making it pretty.
We'll get to that.
So let's say there's an edge over here, something like this. And that's your anchor, right? And as people climb, let's say the route is traversing left and right, so that kind of action is happening over this edge, right? And that can cause things to.
So equalization, this actually brings up an interesting point which we will address in equalization. Limited. Okay, equalization is, so like, let's say one of the anchor points fails.
It looks like it has limiters.
Yeah. So one of the anchor point fails. Yeah. So wherever you are hanging out, right? Let's say the anchor is here. So both of them should be, sorry, wherever the load is, both of them should be equally loaded. That's the whole concept behind equalization. So you can't have an anchor that is loaded in this direction, right? And there's no load on this.
Then when that anchor is going to fail, you'll have a sharp load on the other.
Exactly.
Just 100% is coming on one.
Yeah.
Right.
So right at the very beginning, you're losing the advantage of distributing your load amongst two different points, right? And so instead of giving them each half the load, you're giving one of them all of the load. And so if it's already a questionable or marginal anchor point, then you're much more likely to break it off with the excess load.
We'll come to how to overcome some of these things, because